Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 500 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I am your host, Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Go and check out all of our books on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. It's called From Letters to Leaders. Go and check that out today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring fraternity and sorority members together. Fun fact, I am on location today. Normally, I am shooting these podcasts in the Greek University headquarters, but today I am at SUNY Plattsburgh today for National Hazing Prevention Week, and we are here to celebrate episode number 500. So thank you to all of our listeners over the years. I'm so grateful that you've been listening and sharing our podcast. And I got to tell you, I have the best guest on the planet for episode number 500. I am so excited. You have no idea because we have so much in common and we have all the same interests. So I know it's going to be a great conversation. And so our guest today is Dr. Cristina Luna. She serves as the Director of Greek Life at the University of Miami, which is a community comprised of over 3,000 students. She is the primary advisor to the Association of Greek Letter Organizations, Panhellenic Associations, and the 3 honor societies. In addition, she serves as a conduct officer, is the National Executive Director for an Honor Society. Prior to joining the Keynes family, Dean Luna was the Assistant Director of Fraternity and Sorority Life at the University of Central Florida. She received her bachelor's degree from Baylor University, her master's degree from the University of the Incarnate Word, and in November of 2022, she defended her dissertation. I know what that picture looks like on her Facebook account, earning her the Doctorate of Education in Organizational Change and Leadership from her beloved USC. This is a big USC fan right here. She is a proud Trojan and an active sister of Hermandad, De Sigma Iota Alpha Incorporated. Welcome to the show, Dr. Luna.
Hi there. Happy to be here. Super excited. Love the energy. And 500. That's amazing. I can't believe you already reached this milestone. Congratulations.
I can't believe it either. You know, it just started out as something fun to do, to interview all of my friends and like get to share that with college students all over the country. And it's just my way of giving back. It's creating this resource of just amazing people. I just think within fraternity and sorority life, you and I know so many of these greats that are around us all the time, and we take it for granted at these conferences and conventions. And I just wanted to capture it on tape so that way future generations can go back and listen to it and be like, hey, I remember when Dr. Luna said X, Y, and Z. And like those moments are just precious to me, and I want to capture it on tape. And so that's how it started, and here we are at number 500.
Love it. Let's do this.
Let's do it. All right, so let's talk about it. You attended Baylor University for your undergraduate experience. I love Baylor. I'm just wondering, why did you end up choosing Baylor?
Yes, you can see my little Baylor swag hanging back there. That wasn't intentional. It hangs in the office all the time. So ironically, Baylor fell into my lap as an option. I can't say that I was destined to go to Baylor since I was a child. I was actually third in my senior class of 396 students. And my high school counselor brought me into her office. I remember it was like February of my senior year. And she tells me, you still haven't declared where you are attending school. Like the rest of the top 10 students have already like declared. And she sits me down and she's like, we need to have a chat. She leaves the office. And I'm there thinking, like, I knew I wanted to leave my hometown area for a broader college experience, just, you know, experience new things outside of my small hometown area in South Texas, which was a very small border town. But I was and continue to be sometimes a little bit of a procrastinator. And so I was just living my senior year. I also knew that I could get into any Texas public school, as their top 10 kind of percent rule automatically got me in. So I wasn't too concerned about that if I wanted or ended up going to one of those state schools. And as I'm sitting in her office, I look over to her bookshelf, right? Kind of like my big old bookshelf I have here. And she had a Baylor catalog in her office. I remember pulling that catalog, kind of skimming it, taking a look, growing up, I was both an athlete and a nerd. I'm not gonna lie. I loved math. I excelled at math since a young age. My dad was like, I was also very creative. I grew up as an only child, so I think that kind of played a role into it. And my dad one time told me, he's like, what if you put those two together? Like maybe, I don't know, architecture, right? Like you've got the arts, you got the math skill set. And so honestly, I wasn't sure what I was going to pursue. And I did see architecture was a program offered at Baylor as a co-op with Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri. And I said, you know what? I think I could go here. Before you knew it, that's how I got to Baylor. I applied and I got in, got a scholarship. We went and toured the campus for a spring preview, and my parents loved at the end of the day that it was a smaller school. It wasn't like the A&M and the UTs that had like 50,000 students. They loved the size of the campus. They also loved that it had a Christian environment. I grew up Catholic. Baylor is very Southern Baptist. So it did have some strict rules that I think my mom was like all for, sign her up. And at the end of the day, that was my Baylor story. That was my story as to how I got to Baylor University. It was a unique experience. I tell people, and people are like, I am still a big fan of Baylor. I follow, sports and stuff. I become a much bigger USC fan, not only because they are a very big sports school too, but because actually USC was one of the schools I put the most thought into. For where I wanted to go to pursue a doctorate degree. So that was a genuine investment because I said, I'm only going to apply to one school. If I'm in, I'm in. So it was a very different experience than my undergrad. So yes, I'm a diehard Trojan fan, still a Baylor fan. But some people confuse and think that I did my undergrad at USC. And I'm like, no, it's just that I feel a different connection because of the investment I took to apply there.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I totally
Yeah.
get that. And if you haven't been to a football game at USC, let me just tell you, it is an outer worldly experience. I will never forget my first football game at USC. I'm like, wow, this is on a whole nother level. I don't even know what's
Yeah,
happening.
that's certainly a bucket list item to do. I did start my program in 2018 and then, COVID happened. So I wasn't trying to get out there during that time, but it's certainly on my to-do list.
You got to go. It is just tremendous. You just have to experience it, and it's going to give you a whole new love and appreciation for the Trojans. So really, really cool. Now, while you were at Baylor, you actually joined Hermandad de Sigma Iota Alpha Incorporated. I'm curious, what made you want to join their sisterhood over the many other organizations on campus?
Yeah, so for those that don't speak Spanish, Hermandad means sorority. So it can be interchangeable, kind of like sorority, brotherhood, sisterhood. So that for us, instead of having like Sigma Iota Alpha Sorority Incorporated, we have the sorority at the front end of our name. So can also be a bit of a long story, but I had the privilege of starting my chapter of SIA, in short, which was the first chapter in the state of Texas. So it was a big deal for SIA at the time to expand to Texas as an organization that was founded in New York, who had also just expanded to California the year before in 2002. So big leaps, right, of expansion for a small organization that at the time was only 13 years old, founded in 1990. So like I said, this could be a little bit of a long story, but I'll try to highlight some of the key points. I met a student at Baylor. Fun fact, he messaged me on AOL no, at that point it wasn't 2.0, AOL 7.0, AIM. But I had the actual AOL program and messaged me. We became friends, and I go and find out he's in a Latino fraternity. I had no clue those existed. I had only visibly seen IFC fraternities and Panhellenic sororities at Baylor my fall semester. My roommate went through sorority recruitment, so I kind of got to experience a little bit of that through her. And he took me to his end of year fraternity formal, and it opened my eyes to a whole new world. The fraternity was Phi Iota Alpha. I got to see all that they did as a brotherhood, how close they were, how they served the community. They had slideshows of pictures. There was one brother who gave his like senior graduating speech. I didn't know the guy. He starts crying, he's bawling, and I literally want to go up there and just like hug him because it seemed so valuable and meaningful of an experience to him that I was like, you know what? I think I want that, right? There has to be that experience for women. And like, how do I find it? So some of them had hinted that they had met other sororities when they traveled. Their organization was also founded in the Northeast, and they were like, yeah, we have some sororities that we've come across and encountered. So they shared names. So by the start of my fall semester of my sophomore year, I was doing research left and right. I remember there was a website, I don't recall if it was latinostep.com or latinogreeks.com, that just listed all the groups that existed at the time that had identified as Latina organizations. And I started researching, going to their website, seeing what information was out there. I even looked on AOL for members that were part of these groups. And my goal was to hear from them, like what was their experience like versus contacting like an expansion email and saying, hey, I'm interested in your organization, give me more information. And funny enough, members of SIA were the ones that most often responded back to me and were like, hey, this is me. This is who I am. This is where I live. This is what I'm all about. This is what I'm doing. And in there infused a little bit of SIA talk. And I love that it felt like I was just making a new friend. It didn't feel like I was being recruited from far away. And I'm sure they were probably like, who is this crazy girl from Texas messaging me that wants to learn about my organization? And so skip ahead a little bit of time. Before you knew it, I had tried to kind of word of mouth share that I was starting a new sorority on campus, and through friends recruited a few others. SIA ends up hosting an informational for us in person, but in New York. So 4 of us make the trip to New York. It was August of 2002 at this point. I initially started my research fall of 2001, and they hosted at New York University. And when I walk into that room, into that space, there's about 30 sisters in that room. And I get to meet them. You know, there's 4 girls. They came out to meet 4 girls from Texas. And of those 4 girls, I ended up being the only one that joined SIA. But nonetheless, I met sisters that joined in the early 90s. I met the national president at the time for SIA. And I saw how connected they still were to the organization, how valuable and meaningful it was for them, that they were still contributing, they were actively involved. And that's when I knew that it was more than just an undergrad experience, and I was sold. I would then go on to join fall of 2003. So it was still another year. It took me about 2 years. So I joined my senior year, first semester of my senior year, and my active life as a member of SIA has been 100% pretty much as an alum. And this fall, November 2024, I will be celebrating 21 years as an active dues-paying member of Sigma Iota Alpha.
Oh, it's a beautiful story. That's just incredible. So a couple of observations. Number one, I am not shocked at all that you are a founding sister of your chapter in Texas, because all of the founders that I know, no matter what council we're talking about, they're all rock stars. Like every single one of them. There's something special about that experience that creates just incredible humans that are incredibly successful in their careers. So that doesn't shock me at all. It totally, makes sense. And the other thing too, and we've talked about this before, is that like I just have this newfound appreciation for like NALFO organizations, because I just know how valuable that is for the Latino community in order to get opportunity. And just even just talking about like graduation rates, like looking at the research, I actually saw that Latino students are graduating at like 20 points less than white students from college campuses. And these organizations in NALFO have figured it out. They figured it out that if they provide love and belonging, right, going back to Maslow's hierarchy, if they provide that to the students, then they will stay and they will graduate. So what you're selling is not sorority or fraternity. What you're selling is opportunity for Latino students. And that to me is just brilliant. Just brilliant. And so anyway, so I have such a huge appreciation I just love spending time with these organizations. Just came back from a national fraternity convention for a Latino organization, and that's really what stood out to me. And I also saw that lifetime commitment to the organization. These were people that were much older, but they still had a huge appreciation for the organization and what it did for them. And that really stood out head and shoulders, that this is a commitment for life, as opposed to what I traditionally see in the white fraternities and sororities, whether you're talking about an IFC organization or Panhellenic. It's something that we did past tense, not something that we do for a lifetime, right? And so that is very apparent to me when I see the members. And so I think that is all brilliant. You actually served as both national president and also VP of risk management for SIA for a total of 6 years. So what are you most proud of in terms of your accomplishments in working for your own organization?
So, fun fact, I always joke because not many people say this as an interest for Greek life or a new member for Greek life, but since I was an interest for so long, I was an interest for 2 years. I remember my best friend at Baylor at the time. I told her, I was like, one day I'm going to be president of SIA. Like, that is my goal, right? I want to be president of this organization. And then not only because I also got to meet the president at the time, like I was just very committed, very passionate. And the expansion director that I worked with knew, like, they were like, if everybody that starts the new member education process on Chris's line, they were like, if they were all to drop, we know Chris will still continue and will make it to the end. And even if she's the only one going strong, she will find a way to make SIA thrive in Texas and grow. So I was just like enamored that they saw that fire in me and invested in us out in the middle of nowhere, Texas. But so that was another thing that also sold me on SIA, that they saw our commitment and our fire in wanting to bring something new to Baylor's campus and their investment in us, because someone flew out from New York every weekend to educate us for our new member education process. And that was what we call our membership process coordinator. That can also sometimes be referred to as like a pledge mom in old terms, that we've phased out. And she, at the time, it was a family law lawyer practicing family law, someone with a full-time job, was using her PTO to come and educate these girls out in Texas every weekend for 10 weeks. And the only reason it went 10 weeks was because she did have some personal challenges during that time frame where she lost her grandma and a cousin. So it delayed a little bit our time. But it was just, I was very grateful. Until this day, we still have a great experience for the commitment she gave to us. And I think because of her, I value her leadership. She was a role model for me. That is why I developed such a passion for SIA.
Yeah.
But speaking of, like, my role as wanting to be president, it's not easy, right? To be a leader of an organization, of a national organization, doesn't matter the size. I think you build tough skin, and if you do it for the right reasons, you don't go in expecting any rewards, recognitions, or high fives. During my second term as president, we made some pivotal changes that helped shape the future of our organization and also helped to ensure we were around for many years. We took initiative to create change that was needed to ensure safe and memorable new member experiences. It was time, as an organization that was founded in the 90s, we couldn't be operating like 1990, like 1995. And from that also came new additions to the national board in positions, one of them being the vice president of risk management. So who finishes 4 years as president and stays on as an inaugural role? This crazy girl right here, right? I wanted members of our national executive board to leave their position and feel passionate of having contributed to their organization, not burnt out, not hurt, and not unappreciated, which sometimes we saw that in past members, right? People that just say, I need a break. I don't want to be around for the time being. And then we lose them through the years. It's probably the hardest job I have ever had. I don't know if I'd do it again, you know. I'm always a resource to my national board and leaders in different organizations. But I highly value all who contribute to the development of organizations. As young groups, we can still change and modify a lot. We are going through growing pains that are necessary to sustain our sorority and fraternities, to sustain our hermandad. We need the volunteers with good intention and heart that will move us forward.
Really well said. I tell you, it's a humbling thing to be in that kind of a leadership position for a national organization. And I agree with you. You know, being executive director of my national fraternity, definitely the hardest job that I've ever had. There's no question. It is hard to do that work, and it's hard on those folks who do that work. And so I thank you for stepping up into that role as national president and then agreeing to stay on for an inaugural position after that. That says volumes. And so thank you for the work that you do. I know that sometimes it goes unappreciated. I know that from personal experience. And so thank you for the work that you've done there and for setting the organization off on the right foot. I think that's really, really important. And now you're the Associate Dean of Students and Director of Greek Life at the University of Miami, which is absolutely incredible. And so for all of those students that are thinking about going into higher ed, what's your favorite part of that job?
Yeah. My only other 2 cents is I would also say do not be president of your national org while you're also starting a master's. I made um that decision and it was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun too. There was a lot of crossover that was helpful. I would say my favorite part of the job working in student affairs, working specifically with this special interest population, is that not one day of my week is the same. I get to work with student leaders from various organizations that are in need of support to help them navigate their leadership journey, right? I get to help challenge them through their thinking process so they can make decisions for their chapter. Now, I also handle student conduct investigations, and those can be anything from being caught with a fake ID to medical transports and student organization cases. This is not easy work and certainly not a job you can just go through the motions with. You have to want to be here, to care for the student experience, and to want to transform lives through the different opportunities we get.
Yeah, really, really well done. And they have the right person at the University of Miami. So that's all I can say. You are a rock star. You are just incredible. And, you know, the other thing too, I wanted to talk to you about UIFI because that's probably one of my favorite experiences is to be a facilitator of UIFI. And I know a lot of students who are listening right now, they might have no idea what UIFI is. And I think it's like a transformational experience. I mean, I'm a better person because I facilitated that program. What makes this particular program of UIFI so special for the undergraduates who have never been a part of it?
Yeah, so I value and support, first of all leadership programs that are targeted at building the skill sets of our fraternity and sorority members during their undergraduate years. I think programs like UIFI take students out of their chapter and campus bubble and really help students see the impact that fraternities and sororities can have from a larger scale perspective. I really would love for more NALFO and cultural-oriented Greek-led organizations to be a part of that experience and help diversify the mix of students that engage with each other in these settings. Because the students learn so much from each other and have aha moments of unity and support. It really helps the students see that they are a little more similar than they think. They still face similar challenges, just in different scale, different sizes. And as member-driven organizations, we are all wanting positive, impactful experiences for our members in our communities. So UIFI, is it's long, it's intensive, it's a week, almost a week of days and activities. I sent a student from my campus to it, not this past year, the year before, and he came back like eyes wide open. Like it was just So beneficial throughout his whole year. He was still keeping in contact with his student. He went prepared with questions like, how do you help MPHC and MGC be more visible on your campus as a leader? Because he was our Greek Aglo kind of council leader for the entire community. So he looked with a bigger perspective in mind. Um, and so he was just getting perspective from different campuses because it brings together students from across the country. So without a doubt, I'm a proponent of these types of programs. And there are also a lot of scholarship opportunities for UIFI, sometimes within your own organizations that support students going. I think our NALFO and cultural oriented Greek students may not hear so much about this, within the spaces they're in. So I ask that our FSAs, our campus staff, our headquarters staff, make sure that they're aware that UIFI exists and that there are scholarships to attend.
Yeah, that's a great point. A lot of headquarters offer those scholarships, and I too would like to see more diverse students that are going. And so, speaking of multicultural organizations here, good segue. You're the president of NALFO, which is the National Association of Latino Fraternal Organizations, and you credit that to really opening your eyes to new perspectives. So, for all of those students who don't know, what is NALFO? And in your own words, why is that mission so important?
Yeah, so NALFO is a coalition right now of 17 member organizations that identify as Latino-oriented Greek-led organizations, right? So in their founding, that is part of their identity and how they promote and embrace the culture for their members in their communities. I would say our goal as a coalition is to not only foster relationships among our organizations, to create a space for gathering, to be a resource to our member organizations, because we were all founded within a span of different times. So some of us are younger and may not have as many resources as others that are a little older and operating a little more steady. So we are a space for shared resources, for board development, but also to be a little louder of a movement together on Latino issues and advocacy for our groups on college campuses. So that is something that I feel is so important, like you said, is kind of just emphasizing the success that Latino students bring to our campuses, why it's important for these groups to exist on campuses, and what impact can we have as a national council in advocacy for these groups and helping support the member organizations.
Really important stuff. So thank you for your work that you do there as well. You and I have bonded a bit over hazing research, and I'm waiting for my IRB approval to come back. It's probably going to be another week before I hear back from IRB. So while I'm waiting, can you talk a little bit about what hazing typically looks like in Latin Greek organizations, and how are we going to collectively combat hazing for every council?
Yeah, so, as a director of Greek life, um, I am a proponent that hazing, there's no room for that in our organizations, in the member experience. If we really want to have purposeful membership experience, we all know new member education, it's something we do once. We do it once. I was like, you don't have to renew it. It's not like every 10 years, you got to go through it again. So that experience is something that unites us. We talk about it for years, what we learned, what we did together. Um, but people also remember how you made them feel. And when you experience something that is not acceptable, that can hurt the physical, the mental of a person's being, that is hazing, right? That is what truly is at the core of hazing in organizations, hazing for initiation, hazing for belonging. And what it looks like, what I've seen and what I've encountered through my research, because my research was on identifying attitudes towards the new member education process in Latina sororities, really pulled out experience over a span of the last like 30 years or so, because I had members that identified being a member of their organization for 30 years, as long as people that joined within the last year, is it there is a lot of mental and psychological hazing that takes place. So sometimes there may not be a physical requirement, but the mentality of what we tell someone may be happening or what is coming, the unknown, the unexpected, really can stress an individual out a lot, right? We don't know what everyone's limits are as an individual when it comes to physical, to mental stress. Sometimes people think, well, I was able to go through this. Anyone else coming after me can go through it as well, can endure what I've endured. If I did it, they can do it. And it becomes a culture. It becomes a culture within a group, within a chapter, a campus culture sometimes, and it's expected. The biggest thing that also is often seen in culturally based organizations is this expectation that you had to have earned your membership. You had to have earned your letters. That's a very common phrase and saying among members in organization, young or old, that they earned their letters to join this organization. And that's questionable, right? Because what does that mean as someone who is not a member? Did you earn them because you did 100 hours of community service, or did you earn them because you were physically put to a test, or you were mentally strained, or you were up for 24 hours or 48 hours, right? So that is something that we continue to work towards education, ensuring individuals feel empowered to report, to end a culture of hazing. Because at the end of the day, as like I said, as a director of Greek life here, I may get anonymous reports. I may get parents that call. But I'm getting very minimal information. They want me to be the investigator. They want me to be sitting out in bushes looking for things happening, right? They want me knocking on doors at 2 in the morning and saying, what's happening behind those closed doors, that I can't see. And it's when the right person shares, here's a photo of what happened at this event, at this incident with these people within this organization, that we can end those activities. We can end hurting people, and we can save people from very bad situations.
Yeah, well, thank you for all the research that you've done, and thank you for the work that you do today to prevent hazing on your campus. And so all of that's really, really important. And yeah, I would say that, certainly we don't know what somebody's threshold is in terms of stress or anxiety, but also what we also don't know is what trauma has that student been through before they even walk through the doors. Like, you don't know anything about that student that you met for 2 weeks during recruitment, and you don't know what their backstory is. You don't know how this event that you're planning, that's actually hazing, and we'll define that as mental or physical abuse, you don't know how that's going to trigger something that happened to them as a child. You have no idea what trauma they've been through. And that can really send a student into a spiral that they cannot recover from. And that is part of the issue. So thank you for doing all of that work. I think that's incredibly important. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about was really your dissertation findings at the University of Southern California. In the dissertation, you talked about a culture in Latina-based sororities that allows a certain level of tolerance for hazing in the new member process. Why were you finding that they were tolerating hazing in the new member process?
Yeah, so a lot of reasons, a lot of shared experiences. As you know, my dissertation pulled from individuals sharing from their personal experience, right? This is the lens I'm sharing from. Some did identify that they were well aware their membership process has changed. And they knew things were different years ago, while others said, I did go through something that was impactful, but I also know that it has changed since. So I know my organization is headed in the right direction to ensure that we are no longer facilitating these practices. However, when I say that a level of tolerance for hazing was relevant and visible in Latina-based sororities, there is still a need and a want to belong. And because of that, people were willing to allow this tolerance for hazing. And the tolerance for hazing was not just by the individuals who participated, but the tolerance for hazing was also from the national leadership. Because there was a question in my survey that asked students or individuals of these organizations what their perspective was from their headquarters when it came to allowing for hazing activities in their new member education. And so that also brought to light that they felt they were aware that existed, or that practices were very openly accepted and part of new member education, and had not been yet removed or excluded, and were so they were tolerated, right? They were accepted and still actively part of the process. And again, in women's organizations, we see, and in past studies that were of Panhellenic groups, as in comparison to the Latina-based sororities that I studied, mental and psychological hazing is still at the forefront of what we see as one of the higher level activities when it comes to hazing. It's not so much the physical activity, it's more mental activity of playing with someone's mindset of, again, the unknown, what is coming, things of sometimes that of thoughts of failure, you're not good enough, you haven't yet quite earned your respect as a member in the organization, having to prove yourself as you go through phases of becoming a member.
It's so interesting that you bring up the headquarters and whether or not they're aware of that culture or of the hazing activity. I think it was Elizabeth Allen's research that basically looked at athletics, and it showed that 22% of hazing that goes on in athletics, the coach either knew about the hazing or was actively participating in the hazing. And then that kind of brings us to that Northwestern case where the football coach was recently fired at Northwestern because should have been aware or was aware of the hazing that was happening within the football program. So all really, really interesting stuff. I mean, you and I could probably talk about it for hours and still not get bored. Really, really good stuff. And I saw that you were recently interviewed on the first episode of the NGLA podcast. So congratulations to you on all of these interviews on podcasts. And there you talked about starting the semester off right for council leadership. So if you had to summarize, what advice do you have for council leaders to be sure that they hit the ground running this fall?
I mean, I think it's important to know on campus, who are your campus ambassadors, right? Yes, sometimes you have fraternity and sorority life staff, dedicated staff. Sometimes you're lucky enough to have a multicultural Greek advisor or NALFO advisor, but not all of us have those many resources or support staff. So knowing who on your campus are ambassadors of your organizations, whether it's faculty, whether it's staff, you might sometimes even have members of your organization, alumni, that are around campus in different avenues, that could support your organization in different ways and capacities, right? And how do you nurture those relationships? You also need to be at the forefront of having relationships with university leadership, being at vice president roundtables, being at university president roundtables, and having a voice to represent your community. That is really important. I speak for all Greek letter organizations, but ultimately also I emphasize our cultural oriented Greek students, not only being at the table, but being vocal and knowing what you need. You can't just come to the table and then when they ask, well, what support, how can we help you? And then there's crickets, right? Sometimes people are like, we want funds to be able to do this, to travel to conferences, etc. Great, you're prepared. Sometimes students are not prepared and can't vocalize, well, we want to be able to go to a leadership conference. We want to go to NGLA. We want to go to AFLV. We want to go to UIFI because we here, Panhellenic and IFC have funds to support them to go there. We want to go there too. Do some research, have things ready to propose for your communities. And then like anything, plan ahead, right? Don't ever wait to the last minute when it comes to mapping out your calendar for the year. That's the most important, I think. You know what's coming. We know that this is a heavy election season, both locally, state, and nationwide. So it's going to be a high emotion semester this fall. Take care of your members, look out for each other, and find spaces to bring to light the issues that are important to you, to your population of students, in ways of advocacy that still promote civic engagement that can be nonpartisan, right? I think there are so many ways to still play an active role and not feel discouraged by getting involved, or when there are societal concerns with who may be running. I think your voice still matters as a young campus leader and youth in our society. So I would say find ways to vocalize your interests, even when your sorority and organizations can't take a stand on behalf of the organization. You can still actively be engaged.
That is a great answer, and I'm going to play that answer for the Iotas at MTSU when I meet with them next week, because they are just getting started as a new organization on campus, and that's a beautiful summary of where they should start as a new organization on campus. I love it. Now, you know that my weakness is really good food, okay? I love to eat good food, and you live in the foodie capital of the world, as far as I'm concerned. So if I were to come to Miami and we're going to discuss some hazing research or whatever is going on, I want to know, where should we be going for a great meal in Miami?
Alrighty, now I'm a born and raised Texan, so my heart lies with Mexican food, Tex-Mex food, and this is not the place for that. So my heart aches for my food that I miss. And I think like any first timer spot in Miami, places like Versailles, Cuban restaurant and bakery are always good, right? It's comfort food for if you want to try Cuban food for the first time. But I have to, guilty admission here, guilty confession. I love Puerto Rican food. I don't know if I was Puerto Rican in another life. I think so. The sorority sister that led me into SIA is Puerto Rican. I think I got some of it from her. Like I got to taste her mom's food. I have two good friends. The Lugos, both Dr. Lugos, they've taken me to Puerto Rico to visit grandma and their family, and I got to taste really good island food, right? So I love Puerto Rican food. And there's a place on Calle Ocho called Mofongo. And we actually just hosted our spring business meeting in Miami for NALFO. I took a bunch of the NALFO reps there and they loved it. It's a traditional Puerto Rican spot. The traditional plate that I had includes your fried pork chunks, arroz con gandules, and tostones, which are your fried plantains, right? So kind of the essentials. And then to finish it off, to finish the dinner, to top it off, they give you a shot of this delicious coquito, which is a Puerto Rican kind of holiday drink that includes various milks, one of them being like coconut milk and rum. So what a way to finish off the meal, right? I'm usually like, can I have a second one? But that is one of my favorite places to eat. I love it.
All right, that sounds good. I'll make a reservation for two. We're going to go hit that place, and that
Yeah,
sounds absolutely delicious. I think it's hilarious that you love Puerto Rican food.
I
I think that's
do.
great.
My Cuban friend, and I think it was maybe when I also lived in Orlando. Orlando's like Puerto Ricanville #2. When I was there, the Chamber of Commerce for the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce was saying that 93% of people leaving the island were now coming to Orlando versus New York. Because in the past, talk about New Yorkers and all this fun stuff.
Right.
New York was the place to go, and now it was Orlando. So there's an abundance of Puerto Ricans in Orlando, and I really indulged in the Puerto Rican food while I was at UCF. So maybe that also had an influence.
Probably had an influence there as well. And I know what you mean about missing like comfort home food, because I was born in Manhattan. I'm a real New York City guy, and I miss the
Yeah.
pizza and the bagels and all of that. You just can't get it anywhere else. So I'm kind of like a fish out of water when living in Nashville, Tennessee. Like, there is no pizza or bagels here. You're going to call it pizza, but I know what good pizza is, and it's not good.
So our students at University of Miami, we have a lot of Northeast students that
Sure.
come to class here or come to study here. On Wednesdays, we do a farmer's market. There's a group of students that have created their own booth and they ship bagels from New York and do bagel sandwiches for the,
Yes.
and they love it. It's very popular. So I get the hype around the bagels. The students love it.
The students know what's going on. There's nothing like a good egg bagel sandwich from New York. You have no idea. If you haven't had it, you have no idea how good it is. But
Yep,
anyway, the
they found
students
a
know what's
gap
up.
and then made some money from it.
Good for them, making some money. I think it's great. All right, really good. All right, so if our student listeners, if they're listening to this and they need some more information on additional resources for NALFO organizations, maybe they need some hazing prevention resources, maybe they want you to come and speak on campus because they think you're so great, where should they go in order to connect with you to get more resources?
Yeah, so I'm always happy to connect with friends of NALFO and the Familia, and just anyone who is investing in the future of our organizations, our students, and just or interested in building a career in fraternity and sorority life. My NALFO email is president@nalfo.org. That's NALFO. And I'm also available via Instagram at It's Dean Luna. So I'm an associate dean in the Dean of Students office. So we all go by dean titles here. So the students will always call me Dean Luna. So I've stuck with that versus Dr. Luna once I got my degree. So yes, at It's Dean Luna.
Dean Luna, you are a treasure. So thank you so much for being a part of the fraternity and sorority community and continuing to do the work every single day. And I love and admire the work that you do. So much respect and so much love for what you do in making the Greek system at the University of Miami what it is today, and your commitment to NALFO and all of those chapters that we're talking about all over the country. Like, the work that you do is just so incredibly important. And so on behalf of all of those students in NALFO and all of the students at the University of Miami, thank you for the work that you do.
I appreciate it. I had a blast getting to chat with you. I love the opportunity for podcasts now. I don't feel so old because I know what a podcast is, and it's been fun. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. And to all of our listeners, if you enjoyed this conversation with Dean Luna, I want you to like it on social media, share it with other students, and we hope to see you on the next episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.